Thanks, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to present today. And thank you to Eric and everyone else who helped him put on this event. It's such a great way to really hear about all of the various projects and challenges and improvements that various companies throughout the Central Coast have been working on. I'm here to tell you about my company's electronic Kanban system. I hear that it's quite state-of-the-art and not really well known. Just a show of hands, how many of you have tried to implement any type of a Kanban process? And how many have those instances been successful, sustainable? Okay, all right, that was more than I was expecting. Usually, through the various issues, a Kanban system ends up failing. And one of the reasons is because the communication between either the customer or the supplier is there's a barrier between the communication. So what this electronic Kanban system does is it kind of helps that communication flow. So briefly about Zurn Wilkins. We have about 170 employees during our busiest season. We are located in Paso Robles, which is about 30 minutes north of here, and we have a 165,000 square foot facility. We do roughly about $115 million in annual sales. And we were established in 1906, so we've actually been around for quite a long time. And we relocated from LA in 1977 to Paso because our owner wanted to be closer to his ranch. We really started our lean journey when we were acquired by a company called Rexnord in 2007, and since then we've done a very large plant floor redesign with implementing all of the lean tools that we've been discussing today, like production cells and the U-shape. Our entire facility is 5S, and our lean culture at Zurn Wilkins and Rexnord is affectionately called RBS and stands for Rexnord Business Systems. And it's just the way that our company has chosen to teach our associates about lean. Our ERP system is Exapta 2009, and it's created by Microsoft. And we manufacture these lovely water control valves that you can see here. Cal Poly actually has quite a few of our backflow preventers on campus. So on your way back to the parking structure, be sure to check out our valves. They don't look as great as the picture here. Unfortunately, they kind of wear down a little bit. So I'm the inventory control manager within the materials department. And like Eric said, I graduated from Cal Poly in industrial engineering. There's quite a few alum here, so that makes me very happy. I also have a business minor, so I was able to take a few other classes in accounting and all of the important stuff like that. And my lean journey really started when I was exposed to certain lean theories and tools within classes at Cal Poly and various school projects. My senior project was to redesign a receiving warehouse at PG&E. And I've participated in various Kaizen events at work. I've actually led a few, but they didn't go quite as well as the one in the video earlier today. And really, my job is all about removing waste, which is the inventory, and balancing, finding that true balance of inventory, not having too much or too little. So it's really important for me to apply lean tools in the various processes that we use to control inventory. So the basics, what it all boils down to really is a Kanban. And a Kanban is a message that signals the depletion of an object that when received will trigger the replenishment of that object. And there's various different loops within a process that you can apply a Kanban signal. One example is between a supermarket shelf on a production floor and the final assembly line. You can have a Kanban within that. But at our company and what our software primarily does is it manages the loop between our suppliers of raw material and the factory. And so as you can see here, it's just the one basic loop. It's not very complex at all, but there's a lot of complexity in just one loop that a Kanban is able to really lean it up. So before I get into the nitty-gritty details about how the e-Kanban system works, I wanted to paint a picture of what life was like at Wilkins before e-Kanban and the purchasing process in general. So before June 2008, the purchasing department would do a monthly MRP review, and it would be a forecast, a stack of information on green bar paper that each individual purchasing agent would be handed, and they would be given a month to review a lot of data. And they wouldn't always, purchase components based off of that information that was given to them. And then sometimes that information was wrong. I mean, it was a forecast. Forecasts are usually always wrong. They're not 100% accurate to what you actually needed to build your product. So there was a lot of excess inventory, there was a lot of part shortages, and it just took a ton of time to do this purchasing process. Then we heard about Kanban, and because Rexnord pushed us to implement various tools, we started with a very small manual Kanban process. And this was just between us and our local suppliers. We actually have domestic or international suppliers as well. But we were only able to implement it with the local suppliers. And basically what would happen is once the material was received into the building, it would be given a Kanban card. And then it would sit there until it was about to be used on the production floor. And once it was used, then the Kanban card would come off of the material, be given to the buyer, and it was up to the buyer to purchase and issue a purchase order for that set quantity of material. And it worked okay, but again, we were very, very limited to local suppliers with short lead times, and Kanban cards would get lost. We had trouble managing the cards. And the buyer would still have to issue a new purchase order. And this process in itself would take a long amount of time. Finally, in the beginning of all throughout 2009, we extended our manual Kanban system to involve barcodes on the cards, and we had an Excel spreadsheet that used the barcode identifier to track a history of the usage. And this was better. It was definitely an improvement. But the buyer it would take a while for them to review the report, and it was totally dependent on whether or not they chose to use the information that was given to them to make the purchases. Plus, our data was all in Excel, so it was extremely at risk. There was, I guess, a number of times where IT would have to recover this spreadsheet, and we would lose a certain amount of data and that history, which is very valuable to us. So we were just putting ourselves at risk managing our entire Kanban system via Excel. But with this system, there was a little bit of an improvement. We were able to implement standardized lead times and use this information to determine the ideal number of Kanbans in the loop and estimate expected receipt date. So it was as advanced as we could have gotten with just internally with just ourselves and the tools that we only had. But then finally in around February 2010, we went live on our electronic Kanban system. So our electronic Kanban system is called Collaborative Electronic Kanban, CEK for short, and it is created by a company called Altriva. And they're a small software company in Silicon Valley. And previously, some of our sister companies had used CEK, so we were kind of just joining the bandwagon. But now we're really one of the only Rexnord businesses that fully still uses CEK. And we're very excited to upgrade this month, actually. We've been on the same version for the last 3.5 to 4 years. So we are upgrading, and it has a upgraded user interface and a whole lot more analytical features. So we're excited about that and looking forward to the improvement that we can really grasp after upgrading. So the basis of CEK and how it works is it follows a component using Kanban cards from replenishment to consumption. And at consumption, it will send the supplier an automatic signal to trigger a replenishment. So as soon as they know that we've been using the components, they'll start building more and eventually ship it to us. And the main element of CEK is obviously a Kanban. And for CEK, it's a standard quantity of units for a particular part number. And this is a snapshot of our Kanban cards, our physical Kanban cards. We use bright green paper, so you really can't miss them. And it has a lot of very valuable information about that part number. And currently in the system, we manage almost 3,000 components. So it's a nice upgrade from our manual Kanban system. And we have about 125 suppliers using CEK, as well as 15-ish users at Wilcox. It is completely online, so all you need to access it is a username and password and the website. So that's nice because there's no sharing of servers or going through all the FireWire complications. And we didn't initially begin with this many suppliers and components. It took us about 4 months from go live to get to a level where we could really use the system and see major benefits. And we still are adding new items and secondary suppliers to this day. And to train a supplier, this shows how really easy it is to use. It only takes about a week for a supplier to be introduced and trained on the system. So all Kanban cards in CEK cycle through specific steps, and there's really no true beginning or end to the cycle, but I'm going to start at the card being received. So it's on the bottom right. So when the material gets into the door, it has a Kanban card on it, usually. And the receiver, all she has to do to receive the card and the material is scan the barcode. And that integrates with Exapta, our ERP system, and receives it in Exapta as well as in CEK. Then the material is put away and is in the plant at that time. And in CEK, in the software side of it, it's showing that the card is on hand at the plant. The card sits there, hopefully not too long, because we don't need slow-moving inventory. We want to use it at the right time, just in time. And eventually, when it is used, a production associate will scan the card again to release it. And this is sending a signal to the supplier that they need to start building some more material. It also integrates with CEK and Exapta again to create a PO, a purchase order, automatically. So a lot of time is spent in CEK really just automates a lot of the process. So not a lot of people are involved, and time is just saved dramatically. So when the new purchase order is created, again, that information is sent to the supplier, and the supplier starts making the parts. At that point in time, the inventory and the card is located outside of the plant. Eventually, all of the material is built that represents that Kanban card, and it's shipped. And this is also an action in CEK where the supplier is required to put a Kanban card on the material and then ship it electronically so we know that it's coming. And then the cycle starts all over again. So some really unique features of CEK that I believe makes it a lean software is, one, it stores a ton of part information. It's a great item master database. It has supplier, main storage location, buyer, standardized lead times, a lot of things. We've even been able to use a field in CEK that tells our production associates whether or not it needs to be quality checked. And then really the gem of CEK is that it integrates with any ERP system. A lot of Altriva's customers use Oracle, so they're used to programming CEK to work with Oracle-based ERP, but it can be applied to any ERP system that you currently use. And the automation is wonderful. It's automating the purchase orders and it's automating the receipts with simply just a scan of a barcode. It really removes the middleman, the buyer, between the customer, production, and the supplier. Another kind of unique feature is that each individual Kanban card has a unique serial number, which prevents duplicate scans or the same action from occurring for each individual part number. So a particular Kanban card cannot be received twice, and it cannot be released twice. And that really improves and maintains the accuracy of the system. Within CEK, a user can look up and find out where a card is at any time, and its history. So you can log on to the system, type in a part number, and then you can see where all of the cards are at all times, whether they're at the supplier, whether they're on hand. And then if you hover over it, the user interface is really neat. But if you hover over a particular card that has been released, it can tell you when the expected ship date is and when the expected receipt date is. There's also an inventory health screen. And this is really great for both suppliers and buyers. They can group their particular parts that they want to check up on a regular basis. And if a supplier is late in shipping a card that they're supposed to have shipped a couple weeks ago, then it will not only send the buyer and the supplier an alert via email saying, hey, you're late in shipping this card, but it will also kind of red flag everything and say, hey, you really need to check this out. So it's a great way for both our suppliers and buyers to manage their components. There's downloadable Excel reports. I mean, this is an analyst's dream. There's a history of every single step and the date and time and who did it for each card and part number. There's a design report, which is basically a mass item master, but then it also shows how many cards are currently in the loop for that part number, and how many are non-replenishment cards, how many are replenishment cards. And then there's a great auditing report used to maintain the accuracy of CEK, where it lists all of the serial numbers for each Kanban card and the location that it's supposed to be at. So our production associates can go and look for that particular card, and if they don't find it on hand, then we end up releasing it, and that just maintains the accuracy of it. And then we actually use this information to predict potential shortages. So a gentleman earlier was asking about, how do you use improved lead time to prevent shortages, and we take information from both CEK and Exapta and put it into a spreadsheet and predict out what specific part numbers are low in their inventory levels and could potentially become a quantity of 0. And so then we take various actions to prevent that, either expediting it or trying to lower the amount of usage. One of the other features is easy supplier management. There's some great on-time delivery graphs within CEK, and those email alerts that I was talking about previously. The supplier can be alerted every single time that they're late in a shipment, or the buyer can be alerted of that information as well. And lastly, what we really use CEK for and how it mostly affects inventory is that we're able to connect our sales and operations planning process to determine a daily forecasted usage, and using that information, we then calculate the ideal loop size. But CEK has allowed us, not only do they have that same calculation embedded in their software, but also we kind of calculate the ideal loop size outside of the system, and then we're able to, on a monthly basis, mass upload all of the loop size changes that we want to make with just a kind of a click of a button. So we're really able to easily flex and control the amount of inventory that is within our supply chain. So now that you've heard a little bit about our previous purchasing methods and our current purchasing method with the e-Kanban, I kind of wanted to take a step back and compare MRP with Kanban, and then compare manual Kanban with electronic Kanban, and really call out the benefits and issues. So with MRP, you're using a push system, right? You're essentially pushing orders without actually using material. And you just get all of this excess inventory if your forecast is off. But with a pull system, you're only pulling the material from the supplier because it's actually being used. And MRP is very heavily forecast-based. Again, forecasts are always wrong. So you're going to have a lot of orders that are based off of predicted needs. But with Kanban, it's consumption-based replenishment that orders only when needed. MRP really works best with low usage parts and infrequent too. But if you have a lot of high usage, Kanban is probably more of the better way to go. Kanban doesn't do very well with variability. If you have a lot of spiky demand, you're going to see some kind of hiccups in the system. But the nice thing is that it doesn't matter the amount of usage. Kanban can work with low usage and high usage parts. MRP forecast errors are going to create major problems, but with a Kanban, your forecast really doesn't have much influence, so you're not dependent on a forecast. And with MRP, excess and shortage of inventory is way more likely than your Kanban system. In your Kanban system, you're able to control the inventory that's in the circulation, that's in the supply chain. And with MRP, your suppliers have virtually no visibility to where your inventory levels or anything, really. But with a Kanban, suppliers are able to manage more of their components that they're supplying to you and keep a certain amount of stock for you. And then lastly, with MRP, you're going to have a lot of problems with accuracy of orders. Buyers are going to refer from the forecast, or it could accidentally order 1,000 units instead of 100. But with Kanban, really, you don't have that problem because you're only ordering based off of the Kanban quantity that's on the card. But you do have a problem with the accuracy of the cards and the inventory. So manual Kanban versus electronic Kanban. Manual Kanban, you have no ability to integrate with other systems, but with electronic Kanban, you do. It integrates with your ERP, and it's beautiful. With manual Kanban, it's very difficult to manage a large number of suppliers or items, but with electronic Kanban, there's basically no limit to the number of items and suppliers that you have in the system. With manual Kanban, it's more time-consuming and more resource constrained when you're communicating with your suppliers. You have to issue purchase orders via email or fax because they're not on any of your systems. But with electronic Kanban, your suppliers are using your same exact user interface. So it completely almost eliminates the need to communicate to them via email. And then a manual calculation of the loop size and also the flexibility within manual Kanban. I mean, it's not going to happen. It's going to be very difficult to flex the number of cards that are in your system. But for electronic Kanban, there's a built-in calculator, and you can modify the loop easily. For manual Kanban, dual sourcing of suppliers basically isn't feasible. If you can't even flex the number of cards in the loop, I wouldn't even try dual sourcing and trying to manage one item going to multiple suppliers. But within the e-Kanban system, you can actually designate a certain percentage allocation that you want your demand to go to each supplier. And then with manual Kanban, the card location and status is basically unknown unless you have a really fancy spreadsheet that's completely accurate. But for the e-Kanban, there's a real-time full visibility of cards. And lastly, like I said before, with our archaic manual Kanban system, our data was at risk in Excel. But with e-Kanban, it's cloud-based, it's online, it's safe. So, yeah, just a couple more things, I promise, I'll be quick. So issues, lost cards, I won't go into that very much. These are all the issues that we've had with e-Kanban, so obviously it's not a perfect system, but spiky demand creates a lot of issues. When to release the card is very unclear sometimes for our associates. Once a Kanban is open, you're losing your inventory accuracy because the system is just based off of the Kanban quantity and not necessarily by unit. So you don't truly know how much inventory you have. Receipts can be missed because they can forget to scan, or releases can be missed because they forget to scan. Human error creates issues. And just standardizing the receiving process and the packaging. Suppliers shipping early or too late also create some issues. But improvements that we've seen: improved material handling. The Kanban card works great with our associates. Supplier OTD, we actually didn't measure this previously prior to CEK, but in the first year we went from mid-60s supplier on-time delivery to high 80 percentile, and then now we're actually at 95%. We've had the highest supplier OTD that we've ever had. Our delivery has also improved, and like I said before, efficiency. CEK is integrated with our ERP, so we're eliminating the man-hours required to create POs. Last slide. The biggest improvement that we've seen is we've been able to reduce our inventory by about 30% since going live on CEK. If you can see that orange dashed line, that's when we went on live on CEK, and the blue line, and you can see the inventory dropping. So it was a phenomenal improvement, and I highly recommend it. So if you're interested, please come see me afterwards, and I can get you connected with Altriva and just tell you more information about it. But we've seen significant improvements with using e-Kanban, and I hope you all will see it in the future. Thanks.